All right, let's get cracking and start with what is an ice queen. All right, Taryn, I know you have an answer for this one.
Ooh, I have answers for lots of things. But we'll stick with the topic at hand. To me, I know that I have come across an ice queen when she is a character. Now, to be fair, I'm only reading about her in lesfic, and also anything I read outside of lesfic is nonfiction. So I'm not going to come across her in nonfiction. But when I do come across her, I know her because she's usually very sharp-tongued. She's not afraid to take people down. And then the motivations might change. It's often, though, the one that I see the most often is that in some way she is trying to prove herself, and it is kind of like her battle armor. And depending on how icy she gets, she might only take the armor off in front of the love interest, or it might extend so that she thaws a little bit with everybody else, never as fully as she will for the love interest, but still. That's how I personally see them.
Right. I think the ice queen is the professional, usually, even in whatever capacity, professional, always aloof, always, from what I've read, super intelligent, face forward, ready to tackle the world, definitely tampers their emotions, tampers any excessive feelings up until they meet the love interest. Sometimes there's a reason behind a damage or some sort of history of damage but in other senses, they're the ones that are, dealing with a patriarchal world or dealing with some sort of situation that causes them to become and have to be that ice queen.
That's one of the things, one of the things I love about the ice queens is they get to exhibit a lot of the character traits and styles that for years only men have been able to exhibit. The power, the control, the drive, in some case, the aggression. Then they get to do that and own that. But the flip side is by doing that, they often, cut themselves off from emotion and that type of thing. And it isn't until they meet the right woman, the love interest, that they get to sort of both sides of them. They can inhabit and go between, find that love.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's a beautiful point from all of you. Erica got very excited there. Yes, Victoria. High five to you, Victoria. So I agree with all of those things. Now, when we created the list, we actually broke down the ice queen trope into 3 different types of ice queens, because we noticed that not all ice queens are quite as frosty or quite as cutting and as other ice queens. So we've got the ice queen traditional, who is someone who's high-powered, someone who has a very distant view on the world. She keeps everybody at arm's length. Then we have the ice queen light, who tends to have some friends and family, something that the ice queen doesn't tend to have. And then we have the beast. The difference between the beast and the ice queen tends to be more that the beast is more physical and tends to be more masculine representing. So we've broken the typical ice queen into those 3 categories, if you like. So now you all understand what we're talking about when we say ice queen light versus ice queen versus beast. Let's talk about the rise of the ice queen and how ice queens have become super popular in the lesbian fiction sector. We do see ice queens in mainstream books, but they're done extremely differently to what they've done in lesfic. Let's talk about why. Victoria, I know you've got a thought on this.
Yeah, because I started reading mainstream romance like in the late 80s and early 90s, and you had awesome authors, Judith Krantz, Jackie Collins, those type of women, and they did have awesome ice queens. But the problem is a man always kind of swept in broke down her walls, but then she kind of lost her agency. And it was sort of like what made her strong and what made her awesome. It was just kind of like, whoops, now you've got a man, so you don't need to be that way. Whereas in lesfic, they get to own it. And in lesfic, women get to be their best selves. So the Ice Queens, they still get to be those badass bosses, but with an added softness that one person gives them. They still are kind of, prickly to the outside world though, but we get to see this sort of loving inner shell that they don't always share.
Well, and like not only do they get to own it, but their partner often loves that aspect of them too. Like they love all of them, not just the part that turns into a little puddle around them, because they get to see the contrast and they see, oh, this is the part that only I get to see, but I love watching you go out and dominate. Like I think we see that with Maddie and Elena Bartel in The Brutal Truth. Elena Bartel would never act around anybody else the way that she does around Maddie, and Maddie loves that dichotomy and getting to see that difference between them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The power dynamics, I think, is better because they're coming from different positions, but there's no like patriarchal mean to somebody wrote, and we were talking about this before, taming the shrew. There's no necessity to tame. You've fallen in love with the Ice Queen for the fact that they are the Ice Queen, and taking away that, they don't lose agency, they don't lose that power, and they're still, and in lesfic it seems like they continue to be as powerful and as motivating as throughout the relationship. You don't feel like they're losing any sense of their self, and I think that's why it's so exciting. In traditional romance fiction, you seem to see they do lose it, like you said, Victoria, and I think this is so much better.
100% agree. The lesfic sector worships the Ice Queen for her wonderfully icy and competent self. I just want to say here, we've got a comment which is beautiful. Wind, I hope I've pronounced your name correctly. Wind says Ice Queen equals competence porn. I think that's pretty much sums it up.
That's awesome.
Competence porn on speed though, because you get competence porn in all kinds of characters. Like you get it with Girl Next Door, you get it with all sorts of, but then with her it's like Olympic level competence porn,
which is one of my favorite things about women in lesfics. What turns me on the most is competent women, and there's nothing sexier than a competent woman. And so the Ice Queen is just like uber sexy.
100% agree. If nothing else, we do love competent women. All right, let's talk about, let's sort of migrate a little bit and talk about how important it is to write the Ice Queen just right so that you do not alienate readers.
I'll jump in,
PJ.
if that's okay.
Yes, go ahead.
For the really intense Ice Queens, it's hard for me to jump into those because I'm such a delicate flower that it's easy for me to get scared off. So what I need immediately is to be able to see just a glimmer of something either self-deprecating or just a little hint of kindness there. Otherwise, I'm apt to go like sit in the corner and cry. So I need that immediate little hook to get me into it.